Hi, and welcome to Lesson 1, What Imposter Syndrome Feels Like. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to describe what imposter syndrome feels like. And it's important to be able to do this because it's a bit like going into a battle and you need to know the enemy. So I think it's a really good idea, the benefit to you, to be able to at least describe the thing that we are trying to beat, imposter syndrome. And I've got a couple of quotes here that I'm going to read, which I think will help warm us up and get us into the ability to describe what imposter syndrome is. First of all, the first quote comes from The Art of War by Sun Tzu. I think I'm saying that right. Here's the quote. "If you know the enemy and you know yourself, you need not fear the results of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle." So I think what Sun Tzu is saying here is that if you want to win a battle, you need to know the enemy and you need to know yourself. So a lot of this course is going to be two parts. Number one is getting to know what imposter syndrome is, and that's why we have this first lesson. The learning outcome is to be able to at least describe imposter syndrome. And also throughout this course, I'm going to be giving you lessons that are going to help you to get to know yourself better. And I think by knowing yourself and imposter syndrome, you are definitely going to be well equipped to beating imposter syndrome and getting out of your head so you can be confident. The second quote comes from American poet and activist Maya Angelou. She's an incredible woman, and she says this about imposter syndrome. She says, "I've written 11 books, but each time I think, oh no, they're going to find out now. I've run a game on everybody and they're going to find me out." So she's written 11 books and still feels like she's an imposter, like she's faking it. And in fact, while I was researching for this program that you're not now taking, I interviewed a lot of people, professionals, including therapists, counselors, speech pathologists, people who were PhD candidates, people who had already got their PhD. And many of them said even though they had expertise and that they were well experienced in their field or in their line of work for many years, they still felt that they were an imposter, that they were faking their expertise, their knowledge. And just like in the quote from Maya Angelou, you can see that imposter syndrome can really affect anyone, no matter where they are in their life, how old they are, how experienced they are. All right, let's look at a dictionary definition of imposter syndrome to help you move towards being able to describe imposter syndrome even better. So here it is. Here's a definition from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. It's a psychological condition, that is, imposter syndrome is a psychological condition that is characterized by persistent doubt concerning one's abilities or accomplishments, accompanied by the fear of being exposed as a fraud despite evidence of one's ongoing success. And a casual definition, or I guess my own definition for imposter syndrome, is when you feel like a fake or a phony or a fraud and people are going to find you out the moment you try to step outside your comfort zone and step into your authority or step into your authentic self. Now let's have a look at a report that was put out by the Georgia State University. This report is called The Imposter Phenomenon, and it is by Joe Langford and Pauline Rose Clance. And here's what they say about the imposter syndrome. They say the imposter phenomenon is an experience of feeling incompetent and having deceived others about one's abilities. Imposter feelings are shown to be associated with such characteristics as introversion, anxiety, shame, a need to look smart, and also having a non-supportive family background. They also say imposter syndrome is a result of seeking self-esteem by trying to live up to an idealized image to compensate for feelings of insecurity and self-doubt. Now, I've got a model to help us describe imposter syndrome a little bit more. So on your screen right now is a triangle, an upside down triangle with the point facing down, and in the middle is a dotted line. So let's talk about the bottom part of this triangle. That's where imposter syndrome is. That's where you are, if you like, that your state of mind is when you have imposter syndrome. And that's where you feel low self-worth. You're not very confident in yourself. You might have some self-doubt, some overthinking going on. You might have moments where you just feel like you're quite anxious. You're very stressed out, maybe depressed. You could even have moments where you withdraw into yourself and don't ask for help. And so that's that part of the triangle is imposter syndrome. Now let's look at the top part here. So this is where your authentic self belongs. This is the part of you that is feels high self-worth, feels competent, feels authentic, feels present to who you are. This is where you feel comfortable within your own skin. And I've actually got, if you look at the triangle, it goes up like this, meaning as you cross over that line, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment, as you cross over that line, your sense of self expands and goes outwards. So imposter syndrome keeps us small and trapped. And as we cross over that line, we start to feel quite free and liberated. Now let's talk about that dotted line. That dotted line I like to call the trial of fire. Now, if you have to go through the trial of fire or an initiation of fire, that's where you are purified. This is where you burn off imposter syndrome, or you burn off insecurities, and you go through to the other side and you feel like you've lightened the load and that you are free of imposter syndrome. Now, to go across that line is scary and can take a lot of courage. I know exactly what it feels like. But that essentially is imposter syndrome in a nutshell. You could also represent this by a circle. You could start by thinking this little circle here on the screen, that's you feeling like an imposter. It's small, it's limited, it's got all the qualities of the lower part of that first picture of the triangle. Now, that circle there is actually the trial of fire that you need to cross in order to expand into your authentic self, your greater self, the part of you that feels like an authority, that no longer worries about imposter syndrome, and that's a much more expanded version of you, as the best version of you. So you could also represent it as a circle. Metaphorically, imposter syndrome is a mask, specifically the actor's mask. You know, the ones they wear in traditional Greek theater, and there's the happy one, there's the sad one. Well, the mask I think imposter syndrome represents is the one that's got the happy, brave face on the outside. And we wear that when we're out in public or in our jobs. And it looks like we're happy and looks like we're confident. But underneath, the actor is probably thinking, at any moment I might forget my lines, and people are going to know that I'm a terrible actor. I'm not very good at what I do. And they're going to start booing and hissing and probably throw rotten tomatoes at me. Okay. I would also say that imposter syndrome is like a cage. We feel trapped in it, right? But the thing is, the cage is not that secure, and we actually have the key to get out, but we don't want to use it because we're afraid of what might be on the outside of the cage. And in some way, imposter syndrome feels safe to be in that cage. Imposter syndrome is also like a coin, in the sense that there are two sides to imposter syndrome. One side is the one that we're very aware of, and that's the one that looks at us and tells us that we're not very good. It makes us feel small. It feels like that people are going to catch us out, and that we're, a fake. But on the other side of the coin is actually your authentic self, the opposite, the complete opposite. You could also say your authentic self is your higher self, your true self. And imagine imposter syndrome, when it looks at you from this side of the coin, it tells you you're no good, you shouldn't try to step outside your comfort zone. Who are you to try and step up and say, what you believe is right and to step into your expertise? If you flip the coin around and see your authentic self, it's the one that says, I believe in you, you can do this, go for it. So imposter syndrome is a coin, and not many people look at both sides of the coin. Now I'm going to finish with a personal story. This is my imposter syndrome story. So many years ago, I wanted to be a professional entertainer. and I wanted to go into schools, and I wanted to run motivational workshops for children and teenagers with a unique talent that I have of creating realistic rhythms and drum beats with my voice, such as hip hop, drum and bass, and house beats, and a whole range of sound effects, which are very entertaining. I'll give you a quick demonstration right now. Here's some classic hip hop beats, all made with my mouth. I'll give you some drum and bass. And some house music. All made with my voice. So I wanted to go into schools and entertain children with that, and then have a positive message attached to that, which was find your unique talent, find a career that you're totally inspired to do. But I suffered massive imposter syndrome, and I procrastinated. I didn't do anything about it for many years, even though I could do it, and other people told me, you've got a great talent, go for it. I was like, I need to know all the steps. What will people say? They're going to ridicule me. I realized I needed a lot of approval from people. I needed validation from others to tell me that I was ready, that I was good enough, and I couldn't quite get enough approval from people. And so I didn't do anything about it for a long time. So there was a turning point where I mustered up the courage and I pushed through, and I learned a lot about imposter syndrome from trying to create my own small business as an entertainer. So I'm going to tell you more about that as we go along. So that is imposter syndrome. That is how you describe imposter syndrome in a variety of ways. I'm now going to give you a quiz. Don't worry, it's really easy. In the next lesson underneath, you'll see it's just going to be one question, describe imposter syndrome, and you click all of the boxes with descriptions in there that are correct, and don't click the ones that are incorrect, and then you'll get a score. So hopefully you've learned how to describe imposter syndrome now. Enjoy the quiz, good luck with it, and I'll see you in the next lesson.